I want to give you my side of the story about Obamacare. Now, this is Lindsey Graham, the senator from South Carolina, talking. This is not a question directed at you. From my point of view, Obamacare has been a disaster for the state of South Carolina. All of you over there want to impose Obamacare on South Carolina. We don't want it. We want something better. We want something different. You know what we want in South Carolina? South Carolina care, not Obamacare. Now, why do we want that? Under the Affordable Care Act, 3 states get 35% of the money, folks. Can you name them? I'll help you. California, New York, and Massachusetts. They're 22% of the population. Senator Feinstein's from California. Nancy Pelosi's from California. Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Democratic Senate, is from New York. And Massachusetts is Elizabeth Warren. Now, why do they get 35% of the money when they're only 22% of the population? That's the way they designed the law. The more you spend, the more you get. What does it mean for the people of South Carolina? If you had a per patient formula where you got the same amount from the federal government to the state, whether you lived in Charleston, Columbia, or San Francisco, or New York City, if you level that out, it'd be almost $1 billion more for us in South Carolina. So to my friends over there, we're going to fight back. We want our money. If you're going to have money allocated for Obamacare, we're not going to sit back and quietly let you give 35% of it to 3 states. What else has happened in South Carolina? 4 rural hospitals have closed because the revenue streams are uncertain. 30% increase in premiums in South Carolina for those on Obamacare. I was on Obamacare for a few years before I got on TRICARE. My premiums went up 300%. My coverage was almost non-existent, a $6,000 deductible. So I want a better deal. And that's a political fight. I'm in a campaign at home. If it were up to me, we would block grant this money, send it back to the states in a more fair allocation, and we would require pre-existing conditions to be covered as part of the block grant. We want sick people covered, but I got an idea. I think South Carolina may be able to deal with diabetes better than and different than California. If you want good outcomes in medicine, you need innovation. And the best way to get innovation is to allow people to try different things to get better outcomes. So the debate on health care is consolidating all the power in Washington, have some bureaucrat you'll never meet running this program versus having it centered in the state where you live. Under my proposal, South Carolina would get almost $1 billion more. The state of South Carolina would be in charge of administering Obamacare. They couldn't build football stadiums with the money. They have to spend it on health care. They'd have to cover pre-existing conditions. But if, as a patient in South Carolina, you would have a voice you don't have today. If you didn't like what was happening to you on the health care front, you could go to local officials and complain. And the people you're complaining to live in your state. They send their family to the same hospital as you go. That's a structural difference. That's got nothing to do with this hearing. It's got everything to do with politics. We on this side do not believe Obamacare is the best way to provide quality health care over time. Our friends on the other side, this is a placeholder for single-payer health care. If you don't believe me, just ask them. So that's the fight going into 2020. Doesn't make them bad, it just makes them different. If we're up to me, bureaucrats would not be administering health care from Washington. People in South Carolina would be running health care. If it were up to me, we'd get more money under Obamacare than we do today. 35% would not go to 3 states. And sick people would be covered. So that's the political debate. We're involved in a campaign in South Carolina, and my fate will be left up to the people of South Carolina. So that's what Obamacare is all about.